And we are on. Welcome to the first episode of the Popcorn Square podcast. I am your host, Neff, with my co-host,
Buttons.
And we're missing a partner today, Kage. He's on this podcast as well, but he's feeling a little under the weather. So once he gets better, he will be joining us. And I'm sure he'll have a lot of great insight. But we're going to move along here. Welcome to the Square, our first episode. We're going to do a little recap of 2023 and then go into what we're excited to look for in 2024. I think overall in 2023, cinema was pretty good. I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10, so average. But there were some good movies out there. You just had to really look for certain things. It depends what you're into. Some people are into action. Some people are into horror. Some people are into more independent films, things like that. But there was a lot of good stuff out there. So we'll just go through a little quick recap on our top 5 for 2023. My first film, no particular order, would have to be John Wick 4. Really had a good time with this movie. The action was perfect, as usual with John Wick. You know what you're getting when you're going to see these movies. I liked it a lot. I liked how they wrapped everything up towards the end there. As far as John Wick 5 goes, I don't know if I'm super excited for it. I may go see it. I may not go see it. But in my opinion, John Wick is dead. And I like when they leave characters the way they need to be left. You know, if someone dies at the end of a movie, just let them be dead. Maybe you can revitalize the franchise with something new, a different spinoff, a different character. But I don't really like when they bring back people that they've already killed off. We're seeing that in cinema a lot, and it's kind of becoming a loophole in writing. But John Wick 4 is my number 1. Number 2 is The Creator. Great movie. For what they did with that budget, it was amazing. I love the story of the movie. I love the acting in that movie. Denzel Washington's son, I believe is John David Washington, did a great job. Everybody did their part in that film. And for them to put that film together with the budget they had, I thought was amazing. The story was super impactful. It was depthy. It had everything that you really wanted to see in a movie. So I really applaud them for what they did with that movie. And that's one I'd definitely be buying on Blu-ray, DVD. I tell people all the time, go watch that movie. You got to support that because those guys were really working with a shoestring budget. And that movie came out great, in my opinion. That's my number 2. Number 3, I think I'm going to have to go with Insidious 5, The Red Door. I've praised Insidious before amongst other colleagues. I think it's probably the most underrated horror franchise. Once again, they put out a good product. They figure out a way to keep it fresh and keep it new. I like how they went back to the family, the original family that they had in Insidious 1, and they kept that story going along. So if they do another Insidious, I'll be looking forward to that because I like that franchise. It's probably my favorite horror franchise from an original standpoint that we're seeing in modern day cinema. Number 4, I think my number 4 is going to be Scream 6. Really enjoyed this film. It's unfortunate that the 2 main actresses are not going to be on the next project, but Scream, I really like Scream. I praise Scream all the time as well, because once again, this is another franchise that just figures it out. Been around for 20 plus years, about 25 years or so, and they find a way to make it fresh and new. You know what you're getting with Scream. You're going to get a little bit of comedy in there. You're going to get some drama, and then you're going to get Ghostface. So who is not a fan of Ghostface? Number 4. Number 5, I'll put Extraction 2 in there. Extraction 2 is probably in my number 5. That was a Netflix film with, I believe it's Hemsworth.
Yes.
Hemsworth, right? Great film, great action in that movie. I like the story. I actually haven't watched the first one yet, but I'm going to go back and watch the first one. But I felt like going into that second one, you didn't even have to know about the events from the first one. They did a good job of bringing you in and kind of explaining things without you having to go back, or you didn't feel lost in the whole process. And that movie was really good. I think it's one that kind of flew under the radar. If you don't have Netflix or anything like that, you might or might not have heard of it. But Extraction 2 is a really good action movie. didn't have anything negative to really say about it, but I believe that's my top 5. Like I said, no particular order. That's just the 5 I went through. But I think that's my top 5 for 2023. I'll pass the next one off to Buttons. We'll go through her top 5, and then we'll talk about 2024 and what we expect from that year to come.
All right, so I got a lot of movies that I actually did see for 2023. Like Neff mentioned, it was a pretty solid year, especially coming off of all the chaos of the writer's strike and the actor's strike and all of this COVID, still recovery from that. I did have a little bit of a hard time kind of picking out my top 5 because I feel like a lot of the movies were right around the same level for me, and some of them fell short compared to me looking forward to it. And I will say, like, for example, Mission Impossible Part 1 was one of those ones I saw in theaters, but it did not impress me enough to make onto my top 5. So that's unusual for me, because usually if I pick something to go watch it in the theaters, it's going to be a solid movie. I do sometimes have those wild cards in there that I just go for the hell of it, but I think Mission Impossible was kind of my biggest letdown as far as, having the potential and not following through on it. But we'll go into Mission Impossible movies, I'm sure, much later in the series. But I think John Wick obviously made my list. Insidious Red Door made my list as well. Air was a good one that I really enjoyed. I do kind of like seeing the behind the scenes, the kind of more of a documentary or something that talks about real events. So Air for me was a solid, had good acting. It was an interesting story that I didn't really know a whole lot about the background behind it. So to me, it was great because I'm not really into shoes, but it was still interesting, and it kept me entertained the whole way through. Mm-hmm. Some people don't like hearing that kind of stuff, but for me it was good. I also put Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse on there. That one, I really enjoyed the first one. This one I don't think hit as hard, but compared to the rest of the movies I saw this year, it made my top 5. And then the last one for me was A Haunting in Venice. Now this one, I don't know for sure if it was also in theaters, but I watched it on Prime. And it's the third one in the series of the Hercule Poirot. Sorry, I butchered the name. But the detective. And so you had the Murder on the Orient Express, you had the Death on the Nile, and then of course this is Haunting in Venice. And I liked this one because it was a little bit more of the horror thrown into the movie, along with the mystery. So the way that they did it, the way that they had it filmed, the cinematography in it, and the visuals, it pulls you in and it keeps you entertained, and you want to know, it's a whodunit movie, and you want to know who done it.
Right. What's going to happen next?
Right.
Keeps you engaged. So that's your top 5?
Those are my top 5. Like I said, as far as, there's still a whole list of movies I didn't get to see this year, but, I will say that out of what I did see, and I mean, we're talking about 30 plus movies here that came out. So again, you're seeing that nice recovery after all the different things. And of course, we had some movies that we weren't sure were even going to make it out this year. And because of those, the strikes and that, but we have a good solid list that came out. And I feel like, we're seeing that recovery in Hollywood that really needs it for the theaters.
Right. The theaters are going to be very important. If I had any honorable mentions, I'll add 2 more, and that will be Killers of the Flower Moon and Mission Impossible 7 Part 1. Like Button said, Mission Impossible was a bit of a letdown for me. Now, the reason that it was a letdown was because of the writing. But everything else, everything was there. The acting was there. I feel the story was there. It was just the writing. It didn't convey the story the way I felt it should have been conveyed. I felt like they were leaning a little too much into the AI aspect, and I feel like they didn't flesh out that idea the way they wanted to. I understand that it is a part one, but I feel like they could have did it a little differently, especially the hype that that movie had behind it and the money that they put into making that movie. I think the studio was really trying to bank off of the Top Gun Maverick success, and they thought that it would just roll over to Mission Impossible 7. Now, they had some competition with Barbie and Oppenheimer, but I still don't feel that's an excuse for that movie to underperform the way it did. But it probably is an honorable mention on my list. If I had to make a top 10, it's probably in my top 10. And then Killers of the Flower Moon, once again, great movie, Scorsese, Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, great actors and a great director. The movie, well written, historical piece, time period piece, very good. We know how Scorsese does his films now, extremely cinematic, a little too long. I think we could have cut out some time there and the movie would have been a lot better. But what I do praise is the fact that he did tell the complete story, so I can kind of give him a little leeway on the time there. But that's going to round out my 2023. Buttons, do you have any honorable mentions you'd like to add?
I will throw one more in here, and I will say before I mention this, is that I think we just have to mention Disney in here. And that is one of the ones that made it on my list, which is actually the Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy 3 would be my honorable mention. There were some pitfalls in the story, but overall the movie was a good, solid movie. I will say it is sad because usually each year, except for this year, 2023, a Disney movie makes it onto my top 5. This year, it did not. And that's sad because we had quite a few releases from Disney. We had, Guardians, we had Ant-Man and Wasp, we had Little Mermaid, we had Elemental, and I believe there might have been one or two more. Oh, the Marvels disaster that was that.
Right.
And so Disney is still putting out, we're just not seeing the quality there as much. And like I said, I do believe Guardians of the Galaxy 3 deserves a mention because I believe it was the most solid movie that they put out this year.
What was your favorite aspect of Guardians 3?
So with all the Guardians movies, I enjoy the comedy with them. You get a lot of serious moments in these Marvel movies, and Guardians to me has always had a nice balance of keeping a serious tone when need be, and the rest of it being very comical and lighthearted. And the comedy is not cheesy, it's not hokey, like we see in some of the Thor movies, for example. Some of it, I'm not gonna lie, some of it is a little cheesier, but for the most part, that is what I like about the Guardians, and I like the fact that the ensemble cast that you have with the Guardians movies, they give you more information for the characters, and you see than with the other Marvel movies. You actually get kind of some background. I think an interesting
little tidbit about the Guardians, that cast has been working together so long, they have like perfect chemistry.
Right.
So I think that helps too when you talk about the comedic aspect. Interesting. I didn't get to see Guardians. I'm not really a big Marvel fan, but I do think if I go through and I watch the whole Guardians trilogy, I'll start from 1 all the way to 3 so I can get the complete story and I have more context to what I'm watching. I do remember watching bits and pieces of Guardians 1, but like I said, I need to take some time, go back, watch all 3, and then I can speak on that more. Let's move on to 2024 and the movies that we have on our list there. It's an extensive list, I must say. Me and Buttons, we go through each year, I want to say at least a couple months in advance, and we write down what movies we're excited for and our wild cards, or movies that we say we're going to take a chance with. Not so much wild cards, but movies we might not even think about watching. We just take a chance and go watch something different to expound on our horizons there. But 2024 has a lot of films on this list for me. I'll go through right now. The first one is A Quiet Place, Day One. Very excited about that. I love the Quiet Place series. I'm really interested to see what they do with this film. I believe it's almost going to be maybe viewpoint of another family, same event, same time. So I think that's going to be very interesting, kind of like a prequel without being a prequel. Dune Part 2, that's probably the movie I'm most excited for this year. I believe that's coming out on March 1st. We have a couple pushbacks with that film, but it's finally coming out March 1st. Godzilla and Kong, that's going to be interesting. Deadpool 3, extremely excited about that. I believe that's the only movie that Marvel is putting out this year. I know Sony's got a whole lot of Spider-Man content coming out, but as far as Marvel goes, Deadpool 3 is going to be the only thing they release. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think they need to step back from putting out so much content. You don't want to water down your material and tire out the audience. Ballerina is on my list. Now, Ballerina, for anybody that doesn't know, is not so much a John Wick spinoff, but it's a film that takes place in between John Wick 3 and 4. So that's going to be very interesting to see. I'm excited about that. Mission Impossible 7 Part 2. I want to see how they wrap up the story for 7, Dead Reckoning, into 8. Now, when I say 8, I mean wrap up the series with 7 and then go into Mission Impossible 8, because I do believe they actually are going to do Mission Impossible 8. So I think I want to say a lot of the expectations going into 8 is going to depend on how they wrap up 7. So yeah, Mission Impossible 7, Dead Reckoning Part 2, I believe that's what it's called. Venom 3 is on my list. I actually did not watch Venom 2. I watched Venom 1. I liked Venom 1. I'll most likely go back and watch Venom 2. I don't think Venom 2 is going to be so important to go in and watch 3. I don't think you'll really be lost. I'm really interested to see what they do with Venom 3. They've been teasing the Venom and Spider-Man on the big screen for a while now. So I think that's going to be very interesting. Also, I believe this is Tom Hardy's last Venom film. So if they're going to go for the Venom versus Spider-Man angle, this would be a great time to do it, because I do think that Tom Hardy is great as Venom. Next, Captain America. This movie's gotten a lot of pushbacks too. I believe they're rewriting the script. They got the actors intact, but they were rewriting the script, and then we had the strike, writer strike, actor strike, so that kind of messed with the timing of the film. But that's one that's kind of in my wild card category. Not 100% on it, but maybe I'll give it a shot. Interesting. I want to see what they do with it. Alien Romulus is another one. I believe we've gotten some insight that that's going to be a Hulu release. I thought it was going to be theatrical, but it is Hulu. I want to see what they do with that. I want to see if they can do with Alien what they did with Predator and Prey, because Prey was a success in my opinion. I thought it was a decent film. So I want to see if Alien can kind of spin that as well in their direction. Joker 2, that's going to be interesting. Lady Gaga in there, Joaquin Phoenix reprising his role as the Joker. It's going to be a musical, so that's going to be interesting as well to see that dynamic between those two on screen. Smile 2, that might be the first, actually it's the second horror on this list. I'll put Quiet Place in there. It's horror, drama, I guess. But Smile 2 is going to be an interesting film. I was a fan of the first Smile. I thought it was one of the best original horror movies that we had a couple years back. It might have been last year. I'm not 100% sure if it was 2021 or 2022. But Smile, I was a big fan of that movie. So Smile 2, I want to see what they do with that. Very excited for that movie. I'll be seeing that in theater. We have Mufasa, The Lion King. I want to see what they do with that as well. I wonder if it's going to be a live action. I did see the newer Lion King that they had put out, and I thought that was decent. I don't think there's anything that's really going to be as good as that original one that we had growing up as kids, but it was a good movie. I thought it was interesting. I think if they can continue that, I think the next one will be successful as well. Now, as far as Mufasa goes, I don't know if it's going to be so much a prequel of Mufasa's life up into the events that happened in Lion King. But I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a good movie, so I'll check that one out. And then Argyle. I believe Argyle comes out in February. Henry Cavill in that, Dua Lipa. That's going to be an interesting movie, too. That's probably going to be in my wild card. Looks like a cool little action comedy movie, so I'll give that a shot as well. But I think that wraps up my 2024. I'll pass it off to Buttons to go through her list.
All right, so I'm not going to go too far into the movies that you already mentioned because you do have a lot of movies on your list that I'm also interested in. I will mention some of the other ones on here that piqued my interest. I don't know for sure if I'll go see them in theaters or if I'll wait, to do some Redbox or streaming service on them. But I do have, starting out like in January, Lift, Role Play, Sometimes I Think About Dying. Those all kind of looked very, like I said, they just piqued my interest and they look like something I would enjoy. For February, we also have that Madam Web, which again, Marvel movie. I don't know for sure. The first trailer that I saw, I was like, no, this is not going to be a good movie. And then the second trailer I saw, I was like, okay, it looks like you're getting a little bit more together. I will say my main gripe with that one is the chemistry doesn't look like it's there between the cast. So that's my only real hesitation between that, because we saw how Marvel kind of fell apart, the Marvels, Miss Marvel. So I'm not quite sure if Madam Web is going to be able to kind of pull that ensemble cast together. There's also Bob Marley, One Love. Again, that falls into my kind of documentary kind of category based off true stories and all that. We do have in March Kung Fu Panda 4. I always enjoyed all those. I mean, Jack Black, to me, he's funny. And so I am looking forward to see what they're doing with that. I don't know what the story is going to be yet. Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire. So I am looking, I thought that they did a good job rebooting this to carry on the story with the first Ghostbusters. So Frozen Empire, to me, you got the same cast, so I'm excited for that one as well. Godzilla X Kong, it's on my, kind of more on my wild card list. I don't know that the last Godzilla movie really was, to me, not that great, so we'll see if Godzilla vs. X-Con is something that I end up going seeing or not. Rebel Moon is going to be, the first movie is going to come out this year still, so Rebel Moon 2 is going to be based off of whether or not I like the first one, and that one is a streaming on Netflix. The last couple of movies that, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, that one I'm looking forward to. I enjoyed the Planet of the Apes movies series, and I know Kage was also very interested in those as well. Furiosa, the Mad Max prequel, it looks interesting, but I don't know where they're going with it. I'm not quite sure what the story is supposed to be, so that one's kind of up in the air. And then for my Disney movies, of course, I gotta look at Inside Out 2. And I am going to see about Trap, Borderlands, those ones, maybe even Twisters. Not sure what they're doing with that one. That one's coming out in July. I don't know if it's supposed to be a reboot of the original Twisters back in the 90s that we watched as kids. If that's the case, it's a disaster movie, obviously, and
Right.
We'll see if it's going to be, it's got the message, in it.
Yeah.
Global warming, we get it, bigger, badder storms, right? And then the last one, of course, in September for me is Beetlejuice 2. That one I definitely will see in theaters.
Interesting. So that wraps up your 2024. I'm going to add The Beekeeper, and I'm also going to add Night Swim to my list as well. These are some movies that I thought about as Buttons was talking about her list that I had forgot about. I'm going to put those on the back end there. I believe Beekeeper comes out January 12th, and Night Swim may be the 5th. So it's going to be a busy January going into that February. I think Argyle's February. But very interesting. Like I said, my list, I haven't had this many movies on a list in a long time. Typically, my list is between 5 and 6 movies. I'm pretty picky. But this list is a pretty solid list, and I'm pretty excited for this year as well. I think that's going to do it for episode 1. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, comment down below. We like open discussions on our platform. If you want to hear us talk about anything that we might have missed, please comment that. But we will be back for episode 2 of the Popcorn Square podcast. And we thank you guys once again for listening and participating in discussion. Later.